Hi there. For this video, I'm going to show you how to create pattern overlays within Adobe Photoshop. That way you can use them for calendar layouts or any other pattern elements you would like to use in your photo composition. So to start out, I'm going to create a new document. This is going to be the size of my final piece, so I'm going to make it 1920. That helps if I type in the pixel window there. 1920 by 1200. And I'm going to set this to being 72 dpi since I am working in a digital color space. There are digital calendars. I'm going to set the color mode to RGB because that is my digital color. I'm going to hit create. So there I've got my artboard. Now I want to create my calendar. I'm going to create a pattern grid, so a nice column grid in Photoshop, and I'm going to need to do a little bit of math because I want that to be 7 columns across, or so yeah, 7 columns across by 4 down or 5 down depending on your calendar. So since I made this 1200 wide, I want to have a little bit of space around it, but it's going to be fairly large for me. So I'm going to go ahead and, since I want to leave a little bit of margin on the other side, I'm going to create my calendar grid to be 140 pixels by 140 pixels. That's just a little advanced math that I did. So because I know that I want those boxes to be 140 by 140 pixels, I need to create a new document and set that up to be 140 by 140. And if you're confused right now, don't worry, it'll start to make sense to you. So here's my 140 by 140. Let me zoom in so you can see this. So there's a couple ways to make this pattern overlay, and I'm going to make a grid one, and then I'll show you a couple other different patterns that you can make. So I want to just draw out a box that will be along the top and along the side and see what that looks like. So I'm going to create my rectangle tool. I'm going to create a rectangle. Here we go. Want it to be kind of thin here. The thicker it is, the thicker your lines are going to be for the calendar. Be kind of thin. Snap to that size. And then I'm going to go ahead and duplicate that layer. I'm going to rotate it 90 degrees. I'm going to move that to the top, so that way it's sitting up top. Hopefully your Photoshop is not as slow as mine. Mine just loves to be slow no matter what I do lately. There we go. So now if I want to see how that's going to look, I can go under View and hit Pattern Preview. And that's going to say this works best with smart objects. That's fine. So then I zoom out and I can see hey, there's that pattern preview of what this is going to look like. So you can turn on pattern preview as you work to see what that pattern is going to look like in general. And that looks pretty good. There's my grid pattern that I'm going to use. Now, if you said I want to have black grid lines or purple or whatever else, I just used white because that was my foreground color to make these white lines. So that looks good for me. I can turn off pattern preview. It's just under View, Pattern Preview. And now in order to make this something that I can use in my other document, I need to create a pattern from this. So I've got these 2 grid lines. I'm going to go to Edit and then hit Define Pattern. So that's under Edit, Define Pattern. And it'll pop up a little window that just allows me to name it. I'm going to call it White Grid. I'm going to hit OK. So now if I jump back into my working document, I'm going to put in a nice background. I'm going to grab this galaxy one that I've used before. Just going to duplicate that into my untitled document here. I have 1 or 3 open. How about 4? There we go. And now I've got a nice background that I can see against. So I'm going to create a new layer. And this is going to have that grid on it. So I'm going to even call it grid, or I can call it calendar grid. Great. So if I want my, pull up my calculator so you can see some of my math here. So we made that at 140 by 140 pixels. So if I said, all right, I want to have it 7 wide, so I know a rectangle that I need to draw out is going to be 980 pixels wide. And then we say by 4 weeks, so 4 times 140, that's by 560 pixels high. Then I know that that's how big I need to make my selection on here. And that would be far more helpful if Photoshop worked for me. All right, I'm going to draw a box. So I'm going to grab my rectangle tool. I'm just going to draw a box somewhere on my canvas here. And then I'm going to make it that 980 by 560 pixels. But then I'm going to add a couple pixels just so I get the full border, because otherwise it's going to actually cut, not give me a full border on all the way around. So I'm going to add not that many pixels, 983 by, let's go 563. And there we go. I can define the size of the calendar that I want to use. So this will be the size where my dates go. So I'm going to go ahead, because this is a smart object, I'm going to right click on the rectangle and hit rasterize layer just so I can grab those pixel dimensions, select pixels. I'm going to do a new layer. And then in my layers panel, I'm going to scroll down to where I see the word pattern. And that pattern I made is actually kicking around down here. That is my pattern fill that we made in that other document. So I'm going to say snap to origin. It'll snap to that left side. And for whatever reason that didn't quite get all of that. You can also size your pattern if you're like me and hey, I didn't get quite the right size, so let's try 99. Close enough. All right, we'll hit OK. And there's my grid view that has brought in for me. I can size this, and you'll see that's going to give me more or less of that pattern. So if you wanted more of it, if your Photoshop doesn't freeze constantly like mine does, thanks Photoshop, you can size it. It's a scalable thing if you want more or less. If you said that math was confusing, well, you can also just drag a box, fill it, and then adjust the size of the box to the size that you want it to be. My Photoshop's just being very glitchy when I do this, as you can see in this video. So you can size it that way as well. Apologize, that's not the best demo ever. My Photoshop doesn't like me anymore. I don't have a powerful enough computer to run it on. So I'm gonna go ahead and not keep that. There we go. All right, so let's look at another pattern. So let's check out some other patterns we can make for our calendar. I'm going to jump back to this one here. I'm going to go ahead and delete both of those objects, maybe. And then I'm going to create a, let's do a color just so you can see what a color looks like. Let's do a really pretty purple here. Great. So I'm going to create just a little square. Grab my rectangle tool. I'm going to pop a square up in the corner. Give it my fill color. There we go. Since it remembered I didn't have that. So I'm going to turn on pattern preview. I go to view, pattern preview. and then I can see what that pattern looks like. This is important whatever you decide to make, just to see what's happening with this. So I'm going to turn off pattern preview, and then I'm going to go to edit, define pattern. I'm going to call this purple dot. And I'm going to go back to my object here, and I'll do the same type of thing here. I'm going to just right click over this, hit select pixels. I'm going to go ahead and do a new layer. And I'm going to give it a pattern fill. Select on my purple dot, and there's my purple dot. I can adjust the scale here, so if I decide that's kind of small, it is a little hard to see here, I can make it bigger. There you go. So that scales the entire pattern. There's the purple dots. You can adjust the angle of it too, so that'll rotate it, which is kind of fun as well. There's a lot of fun to be had with this tool. So I'm gonna leave that at 0. Just, there we go. I'll drop it down to 200% so I can see it a little better. Great. So let me turn off my one there. So the other thing you can do, I'll turn both on so you can see it a little bit, the effects. Move that without Photoshop crashing on me here today, is that you can apply any layer mask styles to it. So if you wanted to do any color overlay or brightening to pick up on whatever you had below that, you can change those blend modes on, and that will allow, like, that looks kind of interesting. And that allows those grids to lay over top of your photo, so you can bring those calendars in. This effect is actually pretty simple if your Photoshop's working with you today. It's fun, it's easy. The potential for this type of pattern is unlimited. So have a good time with it in your composition, and I'll see you on the next video.